Okay, I'd call the curriculum committee meeting for March 17th together. Welcome, everybody. Call, we have everybody in attendance with Joan Ensign setting in for Ted. And could we have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I don't believe there's any public comments. So why don't we go to item number 5? And that's Act 20 update. Amy.
Thank you. I'm Amy Johnson, Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction, and I am joined by 3 of our elementary instructional coaches, so I'll have them introduce themselves.
I'm Leah Zwettler. I'm the instructional coach at the intermediate building.
I'm Dawn Peters. I'm the instructional coach at Prairie.
And I'm Heather Seichel, the instructional coach in Heritage.
So I'm going to go through a series of slides that provide information about what it says in the legislation and then how we are addressing that mandate in Waunakee. And I'll pause for questions, or if the coaches have anything to add, they'll just jump in as we go along. So there's 3 main aspects that I want to talk about today from the legislation. So the first is the training requirements. Second would be the assessment requirements. And third, I'll talk about the curriculum and instruction requirements. So the legislation has some pretty significant training requirements. By July 1st, 2025, all of the kindergarten through 3rd grade teachers need to have received a reading training on the list that is linked in the legislation. That also includes our reading teachers, special education teachers, our multilingual English learner bilingual teachers. They all need to participate in the training. And then that also includes all the administrators too. So the principals, assistant principals, and I have also been participating in the training. So all of this needs to be in place by July 1st of next year. So here is where we are in Waunakee. So we will have our training completed by August 15th of this year for all of our current teachers. While the law only requires K3, we have expanded that to K4 just because that is the grade span of our elementary buildings. And the training that we chose is the Keys to Beginning Reading training. Our reading interventionists had already started some training last year, and so they are completing the letters training, and that's 2 years of training, and that's all K8 reading interventionists. And then the principals and associate principals, we're including our intermediate colleagues in this too, and myself. We are doing the letters for administrators training. And then the K4 principals and APs are also doing the Keys to Beginning Reading training, just as their teachers are. And then any new hires that we hire this summer, if they have not already completed the training, we'll make sure that they have the time and resources to do that. And then we are using a platform from Human Resources, PowerSchool, to document the training. So, Erin, do you have anything you want to add about how the training's been going at your site?
Yeah. So I think, so we went through as coaches, the Keys to Beginning reading training as well. And it's a 36-hour training. So initially it felt very daunting. And I think as we started engaging with the material, we noticed right away that there were so many classroom connections. So we felt like it was going to be a training that would be appreciated in that way by the teachers. And I think that is the feedback that I've gotten, is they are seeing opportunities that they can pull that learning into their classroom right away. The end of each module has make and takes and different connections to the classroom. So I think they're seeing a direct connection right away to this learning. One thing that we're doing as coaches is we we wanted to know what the teachers were thinking about this and some of the key takeaways that they had already from what they have already completed. And then we offered some free prep for them, if they, kind of let us know some of the learning that they've had. So we've heard some good, kind of initial thoughts from them thus far.
I think there's a really good reception to doing it. I think people are also appreciating the format that we've allowed to roll it out and having some PD days allocated for them to sit down and really dig in and have an extended time period, as well as work with their peers if they choose to walk through those modules. It's also created after we completed the training, we've really been able to see opportunities of where we'll be able to tap back into those resources. And some of our principals as well are already tapping into the resources in staff meetings so that we can see that come back around and not have it be a one and done over here, but something that we continue to reference and to bring in. So we have a session coming up soon that we'll do with staff over lunch as well. So I think mostly it's been pretty positive and people are really able to bring in and use those materials right away.
I think it's been validating as well, that as the teachers are going through the training, they're seeing a lot of, what they've already been doing in the classroom, reflected in the learning that they're doing. So I think it sparked some great conversations in their PLCs. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot. It's a big ask of teachers. And as Heather said, I think it's been really at least appreciated that they've been given some time to do that. And I think they're at least seeing connections to their classroom. It doesn't feel like it's something separate from what they're doing day to day.
Do you have any questions about the training that we could answer?
Yeah, I'm interested, because we hear about this training going on. But is the focus primarily on the phonemic teaching and the use of sounds to learn words? Or does it go beyond that in terms of also teaching strategies that you use for the fluency part and the literacy part? Could you kind of give a high view of that?
Leah brought her book, so maybe we'll have.
I
Leah-
bet I could pass it down to you if you'd like to take a look.
As she's passing that, you'll find a lot of the verbiage you just used, and we'll have an individual chapter assigned to those pieces. So there is a section on fluency, vocabulary, phonics, phonemic awareness, comprehension. So feel free to peek in there, but I think you'll notice that that's exactly what's covered in there. It's a nice comprehensive overview that really does align with the foundational skills.
So this is like a whole. I mean, as much as there's things that they are currently doing because they've received training in this, that, or the other, this is still a major shift. And the training, is it paced in a way so that is, I mean, we've got this time frame. But how are they reacting to, is it too much in too little time, or does it seem if the pace is working well with our staff?
I mean, I guess I can speak to, teachers are really approaching this differently. So we have some that are choosing to work on it a little bit more self-paced on their own. And others that are working in their PLCs to do this, spending a little time each week after school. So I think they're choosing a way to engage in the material that works best for them. And they are able to work at their own pace and focus a little bit more time on each of the modules. We as coaches, having been through it, we're there to support them if they want. As I mentioned before, I think a lot of the discussions are happening within their PLCs. Yeah, but it is definitely a comprehensive training. There is a module for each of those reading components.
Yeah, when we were going through it as the coaching team, we were kind of tabbing like, oh, this would be a great session to bring back next year for a little mini workshop, or this would be great to bring into PLC. So I don't see this as, ending up on the shelf. This is going to be something that we'll continue to draw on. building off of what Dawn was saying, it is really validating though, because we had done so much work in community awareness and phonics a couple of years ago when we adopted our resources. It fits in beautifully with our comprehension and vocabulary resource, and there's so many connections. So while there might be some new learning, there is a lot that is really validating. Like, yep, we do this. This is what we're, interesting in classrooms.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the next part is assessment. And so there are a couple of assessment requirements in the legislation. So one is that there will be a single statewide reading readiness screener. And that will be administered to students in 4K through grade 3. Right now, that is up to the discretion of the district to select the screener. And so we are using STAR Early Literacy for that, and the legislation is 4K through 2 before Act 20. So we know that there will be a statewide screener. We do not know yet what that is. So we are still waiting that information. After the screener, another piece of the legislation is that students that are below the 25th percentile will be given kind of a follow-up diagnostics assessment to kind of dig into more specific skills or needs of the student. And that will be kind of a list of choices for us. That won't be one single assessment that will be required. We can choose. But again, we don't know what that list is yet. So how are we meeting that requirement? We are waiting for information. So this one is really one that we are hoping we get information from DPI, but we have heard that it's likely it won't come until the summer, which is a little problematic for us because we, would normally renew our STAR subscription, and if it's different than that, we'll have to do some training. We'll have to work with our tech and make sure that it's all up to speed. So we wish that would come a little sooner, but we'll take it when we get it. The legislation was, there was some trailer legislation about giving us a little, buffer there because of the lateness of the decision. So we could be exempt from the fall, but we would have to administer winter and spring. I mean, I appreciate their recognition that the timeline is tight, but that is also problematic because it would be nice to have the same instrument. So we are hoping just to find this out as soon as possible and then our action plan. So that's really all there is to update on the assessment piece.
So for the students that fall in the lower 20th percentile, is that compared to the lower 25th percentile of all students in Waunakee, or is it all students in the state, or what is that?
It would be for the assessment, like the assessment would be different. So it would be if they score in the 25th percentile for the assessment.
Okay,
Of their grade, right?
Right.
Right.
okay. And then the goal would be that those students would fall in that percentile. It's a test and score. Like there would be improvement like that, but that's one thing that we're.
Right, and
Okay.
part of that diagnostic piece then is to help identify, what does that student need to be able to close that gap.
And then in 3rd grade, when they're transitioning to 4th grade, they take that assessment in the spring. And they fall in that category. What does that look like for them in 4th grade?
I do not have that in this update. There's a lot in this legislation, and
Okay.
so, and that is still fairly nebulous.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'll be giving you updates on this
Okay.
for years to come.
Okay.
So I don't have that part.
Okay.
So the last part I wanted to talk about is the curriculum and instruction requirements. So the legislation talks about science-based early literacy instruction, and they define that as being systematic and explicit and containing these 9 qualities or characteristics. So there's one approach that's prohibited in the legislation, and that is called 3Qing, or sometimes you might see that as MSV or meaning, structure, visual. So that will not be allowed starting next school year. The next part is talking about the list of curricula generated by the Early Literacy Curriculum Council. You may have seen that in the news. They recently completed their work. So are schools required to adopt something from that list? No, we are not. That list is only for if you're interested in applying for the grant reimbursement. It is not required that we use one of those for curricula that they identify. So how can we determine if what we're using doesn't violate the 3Qing prohibition? So the main two questions we need to ask are, does our resource follow a specific scope and sequence? And then does the resource require the learner to apply their knowledge of phonics to solve an unknown word? Okay. So in the legislation, it does not require that we change our resources. It does require us to make sure that they're aligned to those 9 characteristics and that they do not include 3Qing. So the DPI recommends that school districts review their existing curriculum against those qualities. So that's what we have going up here. So 3Qing is already very limited within the district. So our running records or benchmark assessment system that we use does have an analysis for MSV. Teachers don't use that, but it is a part of it. So this is the last year that we will be using that assessment. There is an intervention, a small group intervention, like during the IE or WIN block called LLI, that does reference 3Qing. Many of the reading interventionists have already phased out that resource, and that this is the last year that that will be used. And then when teachers are working with students in their small groups, we've been doing a lot of coaching to make sure that teachers are prompting students to use phonics and to use their letter sound knowledge when figuring out an unknown. And then we have looked at our core resources to make sure that they are in alignment. So I'll talk a little bit about that now. So this chart has those 9 qualities on the left. And then this shows which of our resources help us address that characteristic. So you can see the key on the side there. Those are our core resources. So Heggerty is a phonemic awareness curriculum that we use in 4K, first and kindergarten. Foundations is our phonics resource that we use in kindergarten through 3rd grade. 4-5 is kind of a supplemental resource that is computer-based and it's dynamic. It adjusts to the needs of the learner. And that is something that students use for additional practice. Making meaning is our core reading, comprehension and vocabulary resource, and that's from the collaborative classroom. And then being a writer is our core writing curriculum resource. And then of course, teachers are always differentiating and meeting with individuals or small groups, and so that's our individualized instruction. So then I have a little bit of detail about each one of those resources. So this is about foundations. So foundations is definitely a structured literacy approach. It's very aligned to those science of reading tenets. We use this in K through 3. It's 30 minutes a day. It uses Orton Gillingham principles, if you're familiar with that. Wisconsin, when that Early Literacy Curriculum Council was looking at the resources, they were looking at comprehensive resources like a basal or a program that had all 9 of those components. Other states have looked at individual components, and so the 12 states there approved foundations as matching their science-based legislation. But Wisconsin didn't evaluate that because it was a standalone and not part of a larger package. Collaborative Classroom, that's the publisher of our Making Meaning and our Being a Writer. Making Meaning is really about comprehension and vocabulary. There is a new edition of that called Being a Reader. And then our Being a Writer, we do use in K through 6. That's our, it's currently in its 2nd edition, and that was on the DPI approved list. Integrity is phonemic awareness, and that we use in 4K and K primarily, and also in upper grades as needed. That is a very narrow focus, just that phonemic awareness and phonological awareness skill. And that has some good research and evidence behind it. And then this is a little bit about that Lexia Core 5, that computer adaptive program that has a strong rating from evidence for ESSA, and it shows kind of how it meets that structured literacy requirements down here. And then, of course, as I mentioned, individualized small group instruction is a large part of our program. Teachers might confer with individuals during individual daily reading, or they also have kind of their differentiated small group instruction that they can hold groups for a variety of purposes or goals. So it might be a literature circle or a book club, or maybe a strategy group, a number of reasons. And then we have a little picture there. I think you all know we have really robust book rooms in all of our schools where teachers can grab whatever text they might need to use with their groups. So based on our analysis of our current resources and the requirements of the legislation, we believe that all of our materials do fit the criteria as in the Act 20. So I know that was a lot. I'll pause for questions, or if there's anything else the coaches want to add. Any questions about kind of our core curriculum and instruction?
So a question I have about, and I don't know, when Randy presented the priorities to us in Act 20, he mentioned that a change would need to take place with Montessori. And I know our book rooms, are they still organized based on A through Z? Is that something that's going away? How does that fit into this?
Yeah, so Fountain Something Else, they're publishers, you know, they're
Yeah.
authors of a variety of resources.
Mhm.
They are the authors of a curriculum, Fountain Something Else Classroom. We don't use that.
Okay.
We never have. They are the authors of the benchmark assessment, so that will be going away.
Okay.
And they're the authors of the LLI intervention, so that will be going away. We do have kind of conversion charts in our book room, so actually, I think you guys have this organized by Lexile.
I
At
saw that.
Intermediate.
That's
Yeah,
I
so,
saw that.
that's really just a way to help teachers, you know,
Yeah.
find kind of what they're looking for, you know, to match the needs of their readers. So, you know, books are leveled in a whole number of ways, right?
Right.
4th grade level text or Lexile or letter.
So will we still be, you know, like I'm in 3rd grade and I'm reading at a level, will we still do W?
So that information was primarily gotten from the benchmark assessment, so we will not have that. Now, many teachers kind of know, like I taught 2nd grade, so an M, end of 2nd grade, so I know, oh, that's kind of a chapter book, or that will have some dialogue in it. So when I'm looking for a book that's a 2nd grade level book, kind of I know what to look for, but it's not going to be used as the assessment anymore.
Okay. And then my other question would be, I was just thinking, as a parent, that's kind of how we know as parents, you know, where our kids are at. That's how it always was. I don't know if it still is, like, we still provide students with, okay, you know, at parent teacher conferences, you're reading at level Q, and so these are the books that we want you to read, these level Q books. Are we still kind of recommending books in that regard, like, or are we changing kind of that language, and our parents aware of it?
We haven't really wanted to communicate in that way with parents for a while.
Oh, okay.
So.
So I'm like
so
dating
maybe-
myself.
So maybe.
Big time.
But it's possible. But our report card standards reads in grade level, so that's how. we would be
Okay, so we're not,
talking.
okay.
Reads in grade.
But the report cards still make references that way, third and fourth grade.
Reads at grade level, is what I should say.
References to the level, so the standards are there, but the comments say, oh. Johnny's reading at the M level now, yay, or Johnny's reading at the S level, terrific,
If that's happening, then that will be.
you know, and so. It looks to me like the level books we have. Could be organized by Lexile instead, which would make, whatever it is, I think. Is there gonna be an effort to help communicate with parents? Not only where their kids are reading and what kind of books they should be looking for. And what label we use for that, but also just the changes we're making so that they're aware of that, yeah, there's a huge shift going on. And so they're aware of what's happening.
Certainly, we'll make sure that, parents are aware of how we're talking about reading. That should be changing already, but if it's not, I'll definitely follow up.
We've always tried to discourage the sharing of a level with a parent because there's not the understanding behind what that level is. For a teacher, what that means is, I know as a teacher that if I am working with a group of students that might be reading at a level L, what that tells me is there are certain teaching points that I'm working on because most books that might be leveled that way are kind of working on those particular skills. So that amount of understanding typically doesn't go along with the sharing of a level. So I think we've tried to discourage that, but
That's interesting, because I've got 4 years of history that tells me different. And so I hope it's different
moving
for
forward.
other students. But
Yeah.
we've had 4 years of that as a family, and so that's why. Whatever we do is it may be time that we have some sort of a parent engagement, whether that's at the open house. As more of an instructional versus a come in and meet and greet or do both, but have an actual parent gathering so that parents really kind of understand what's happening because of Act 20 within our own curriculum and what they can expect and what they should be expecting. You know, it seems to me, a parent should be able to know how their kids are being taught reading and how they can tell if the kids are above or below where they should be. And I'm not sure parents have that.
Anything else for the curriculum instruction for the board? All right, we also are making some changes for our reading interventions. So LLI is one of those functional resources, so that's ending this year. So the K-8 reading interventionists were trained this year in the Wilson reading system. And also have had a refresher training, or if they're new to us, a new training on Sunday. We're also doing an intensive version of our Foundations core resource. And then we have an intensive version of our Haggerty, which is the phonemic awareness piece. And then the intermediate reading interventionists are also piloting a couple of new resources.
So the legislation goes K through 3. We're training our staff K through 4. So 4th grade will be these concepts or will all be transitioned to a flip grade as well.
And then we're training our reading interventionists K-8.
Okay.
And then we already had quite a few interventions on our menu that meet the requirements already, so those will remain. And then at our K-4 buildings, we also have classroom teachers doing some tier 2 or some intervention groups during the IE block. And so we're trying some new resources for them as well. Any questions about interventions?
This has been really a nice piece because teachers are given the opportunity to just kind of try it out, right? And give their thoughts on how does this work? How's it working for our students? How is it working for me? So that if we're making some of those decisions moving forward, we have some good teacher input on these particular resources.
All right, so that was what I have for this chunk of Ask 20 update. More to come for sure. Any other questions about Act 20?
So for the legislation that we're waiting on. At this point right now, if they don't extend it so that you do that, I don't have all the verbiage down, but you do those assessments and wait till winter and then do it again in spring. What would you prefer? Like, what is would you prefer? You don't know yet.
Well, I would prefer that we get the assessment before July. That's what I would prefer.
You prefer that?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious if, I don't think that's a board thing.
No.
This is, that's.
Yeah.
All right.
Other questions?
I just want to thank all of you. This has been a tremendous undertaking, Amy, your leadership, your other Leah and Dawn, your involvement, the hours you guys are putting in is just amazing. And I'm really pleased with the direction you guys are going in, and I can't thank you enough for all the work you guys are putting into this and really this fun. I do think it might be helpful to have a high view of this at the board meeting. I don't know that we need to impose time on our teaching staff to be as long as you would like to be there for it, but I think it might be something worth the whole board would benefit in hearing from. Plus, it would hit a greater group of the public as well.
Right.
So would that be a possibility? Great, thank you.
Yeah.
You wanna just keep going?
Yep, I'm gonna just roll and I put it all on one slideshow. So, part of our agenda today is your first look at textbook adoptions. Many of those, you just find the information based on the spreadsheet. But this is a more significant adoption for us, so I wanted to just spend a little bit of time doing in the background on our K-4 textbook recommendation. So currently we are using a resource called Everyday Math. It's in its 4th edition. We have been using it for over 2 decades. I've been told, it predates me. There are no plans from the publisher for a 5th edition. And when we evaluate it based on the current math standards and shifts, it doesn't really meet everything that we need. And so the teachers are having to supplement and find their own resources to make sure that we're meeting all of the standards. So it's definitely a need for us. So this is a couple of years in the making. We actually started this before the pandemic and paused it and then resumed it. We had a 16-member work group meet throughout the entire year last year. And they really dug into the vision of math from Wisconsin, the shifts and the new standards. Then we talked a little bit about the NCTM framework, and then also the importance of high quality instructional materials, HQIM, lots of acronyms for you. We looked at a lot of math resources. We had samples, online resources, ed reports. And then at the end of that year, the work group determined 2 resources for us to pilot. So this year has been our pilot year. We have 26 teachers, K through 4, participating in the pilot. We have every grade, all 3 elementary schools represented. The 2 resources that we piloted were Eureka Math Squared and Illustrative Mathematics. Both had excellent scores on ed reports and do a great job meeting the standards and all of the criteria that the work group had established. So the pilot teachers really wanted to try both resources. We conduct pilots a couple of different ways. This group really wanted to try one from each. So they worked together as a team. They identified what units they wanted to pilot and then what the corresponding unit would be from everyday math. And they just replaced one of their everyday math units with one of each of these resources. Then we met with them monthly, the coaches and I, and they would talk about upcoming lessons. They would talk about how they were evaluating the resources based on our rubric. We also did some on-site visits to different districts who were using these 2 programs. We also had some Zoom meetings with teachers and CNI folks to really investigate the resources a little bit more. And then they did really find strengths in both of the resources. So we did feel like we couldn't go wrong. They both were obviously really strongly reviewed and they found a lot of strengths in their practice. So on March 12th, you can see our pilot teachers here. They reached consensus to adopt illustrative mathematics for the next school year. So that was a very exciting day. Here's a little bit about illustrative mathematics, or IM, you might see it. It is really a problem-based curriculum. It is fully aligned to the standards, and it's one of the curricula that was really developed with the standards in mind. A lot of times publishers will try to kind of retrofit their materials to meet the standards. This was really created with the standards in mind. Here are 3 characteristics of the resources. So one of their goals was really to spur that enjoyment of mathematics, also encourage peer discourse, discussion, and perseverance. So I pulled just some snippets from the website that kind of explain that. So I'll let you take a look at that paragraph. Thanks. We had to get that last word. The teachers. Another characteristic is the intentional lesson design, promoting mathematical growth. Read a little bit about what they say about that. And then finally, focusing on math community. And that's a long one. You might have to move our picture like that. I think. So one interesting quality of IM is that it's a nonprofit organization with a really noble cause of wanting all students to experience high quality mathematical materials. And so it is open source, so it is freely available. Now, schools can choose to work with publishers for the printed materials so that we don't have to kind of print them off at the copy center, and also digital materials. So while illustrative math is kind of the open resource, that's the curriculum, there are lots of different publishers that will help you implement that product. So the K-4 teacher selected Imagine Learning for their platform for IM. So you might see that as Imagine IM is how it might be abbreviated and how you might see that. So that's illustrative mathematics. So we really liked this publisher because the student facing materials were really colorful and really engaging. It also had a lot of teacher support, so the teacher manual was very friendly, very easy to use. That's important when we're starting a new resource. They also had a lot of videos for teachers, like here's the math in this unit, and here's what this routine might look like. So a lot of embedded teacher supports, which we think will be really helpful. They did also have other media for students and for families, so you can push out little videos for families to watch, or there's videos for you to use in your class with students. And then they also have just manipulatives and kits kind of ready to go for teachers. So we felt like from the student perspective, it was really engaging and had a lot of nice features, but also from the teacher end, it was really supportive. So I'll pause there. Do you have anything to add for our K-4 math review, or do you have any questions for us for that?
Yeah, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
I am a member of the math department and I'm the Heritage Building rep for that. And this is my 7th year in the district. And I think what's really powerful to think about is, as Amy walked through the components of this program, there were small snippets of a lot of the connections that not only is Wisconsin really worked to embed into their new standards, as well as the shifts in thinking and the Wisconsin mathematics or vision for mathematics as well. So I think we've been working for years and teachers are on board with like, hey, I want more discourse, that I want students talking. I want more problem-based activities. I want problems that every student can find a way to access. So we call that like a high floor, low ceiling. So we can get a lot out of that problem, but it doesn't matter how you approach it as long as you can find that answer. What has been missing though is the full process, the scripting out of how to make that all happen. And so our current resources really don't have that built in. So some teachers have taken on what they can and they have tried to implement portions of it. But as I really watched and was listening through that to see it all kind of come together here on the screen, it's really powerful to see that we are able to access a program now that not only has all the components, but it also provides the language, the pacing, the scripting out so that teachers can really move into areas they've been interested in. And at K4, often teaching all the subjects, it can be a lot to say, I'm gonna go in and figure this all out on my own. So that would be the piece that if there's any background I can give, it really, I think, Tim, when we were K-12, we've really been talking about that for years. So it's inspiring to see that now we'll be able to allow our students this opportunity to be in a classroom that allows them to see themselves as mathematicians. So thank you. Appreciate that.
So what would a parent expect to see different from their daughter or son coming home from school with math? Whether it's practicing for an exam or is there different strategies that they will see that they don't have a clue on how to work them? It will be very similar to what they've been seeing. On that level, what's different? If that's a fair question, I don't know.
I think we have seen that they use a lot as, separate units. So I'm excited to see it as like what a whole year will look like as we move on to that. I think that the one thing that Everyday Math did provide for us was a lot of strategies that were different from what we may have accessed as learners ourselves. So that piece I don't think will be super new. I'm hoping now though, we could provide a video to support that work if something is coming home in a different way. Like you mentioned before too, how we might want to rethink about how we educate parents around how to provide problems versus like routine, just memorization and practice, right? So I think that it will give us the language, it'll give us the tools, and it will provide us, I believe, a place where we can help parents to guide and bring their children along.
And we've really already started the discussion as coaches about how we can be really intentional about how we're supporting our teachers next year, what that looks like, and also supporting families. I think we all will be learning as we go through this for the first year. But I think there is a lot of excitement. There's definitely some anxiety that goes along with that. We've used everyday math for a very long time. So we really want this implementation to be successful. And so I think we're having those conversations now about how do we really intentionally, provide the support that's needed. As we talk as coaches, some of the coaching cycles that we might do with PLCs, and provide that kind of as needed, professional development and learning as we go.
You mentioned that in the pilot, they taught 1 unit. So what would a typical unit, how much time would that be?
It varied.
Anywhere from about 3 weeks to 5 weeks.
Oh,
I'm trying to think. It really depended. Yeah, it was. Several of the grade levels also had the opportunity to kind of see that first unit kicking off. Especially I think several grade levels were able to look at the IM curriculum kicking off and how to build that community, just like we would as we think about building our SEL communities in other content areas as well. So I think that that's also a piece that
We did provide the whole resource for people to look at the units that they were not teaching also, but they taught.
Do you feel that the content in grade level is similar to the content that's in the other? Will there be some? As you
Everyday
change
math,
that,
has that spiral, right?
That's true.
So this is more unit based, right? So a unit is around similar content instead of the spiral. So that is different. I think people found it pretty rigorous.
and some things were out of order. Like, oh, is that something that kids can do this early in the year? And they can, right? So I do think it puts there, and I think it's much more connected to the standards. The other piece about this is as if standards were to change or update, this format being this open source, it's always being updated. So, or if there's ever feedback or things that could be tweaked, or they can make those improvements quite often, which is really another good piece of that.
So the standards per grade level though are. So does that mean their report card, which I believe is done by standards? That one has changed.
What might change is, as Heather was saying, the order. So we might be used to scoring fractions with the third trimester, maybe it's now second trimester. So we have that piece here, our rubric for our report card that the teachers get, that will probably have to be adjusted, but the standards themselves are based, our report card standards are based on this, Wisconsin standards. So then I'll just give you a little sneak preview on 5.8. So Go Math is the current resource at intermediate and middle schools. And there's not a new addition in the works for that particular program. So we've been kind of replicating the process that we did with K4 with 5.8. We've been working with a CISA consultant to vet all of those resources. And so this work group selected illustrative mathematics as the resource that they'd like to pilot. And they actually want to pilot 2 different publishers of illustrative mathematics. So the first one is Desmos and Amplify, and that has a significant technology component to it. And then the second publisher that they will pilot could be Kendall Hunt, which is kind of a print version, or the Imagine Learning that we're doing is print and Kindle. So we'll be talking about that. But 5.8 is committed to the illustrative mathematics. So that is something that's very exciting for the district, is that we will have a K-8 resource.
Google Math has been in place for like 6 years or.
Yeah, I
Something
think
like
that
that.
our 7th, because we have a 7th cycle, so yeah. Right, anything else? So, we are hoping to get, professional learning, lined up right away for the fall and things like that. Typically, this doesn't go to the board until May, but I would like to start on that planning, so, if there aren't any objections to the recommendation from this group, I would like to get some of those things set up.
So a motion to move forward with the plan, is that what you want?
Yes, if we want to, we won't be adopting, or you won't be voting on the whole textbook, adoption yet. But if you would be willing to, maybe move math along so that I could start with the planning then.
So it looks like a recommendation to adopt Imagine Learning resource.
Yes,
Motion to move forward with utilizing the Imagine Learning resource. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
are you, hey, that's good, yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you guys, it's lots of change. It's lots of work.
There's a lot, but it seems, at least from, my perspective, the ELA is not that big of a jump from what we have, which is good. We don't want to have two major curricular changes in the same year. I appreciate that seems to, with training, with you're not introducing new resources.
Right. That is why we really wanted to do the training piece this year, so that we can
Focus
get
on
that.
demand next year.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that moves us to summer curriculum projects. First peak.
You're doing a great job driving, unless you want to bring up the spreadsheet, Rebecca. So Amy and I will kind of, jointly work off of this. This is the first look. This was as of the end of last week. And I think, the thing we want to point out is there's a lot in here from our standpoint, a budget standpoint.
Thank you.
This is a larger body of proposed work than you would typically see. Now, the reasons for that are, we have these new pieces coming at the elementary level. If we are going to implement, and our first training with everyday math was one of the first trainings I sat in on when I came here in '99. So we've had everyday math for 25 years. So not surprisingly, we've got a lot of hours in there for the math implementation, as well as other work that's moving forward. There's a lot more than you would typically see for the middle school in here, to get in a good place for the implementation of the 6-period day in the fall. This is above our normal curriculum project budget. But if you've been tracking kind of our budget reports that you get as board members, you'll notice that, we have some balances. And so we're very confident we can handle all of this, but we'll have to be drawing on that as well as the standard curriculum project budget. We're in the process of cross-checking kind of the calculations, because we do have a formula we like to apply. Overall, these look pretty good, but we need to, by the time you see these next, we'll have come through and done any fine tuning on the actual allocations, as well as, here's something that might come out of tech or out of student services. But this is the first look, and then you will have a second look at this at your April meeting, and then it will go to the full board in May. I have to say, I'm really excited to see the professionalism and ambition of our teachers in proposing this. You see a lot of things in the new courses. So like right in the middle of the screen, if you see health, safety, and PE on the left, you will see the unified PE curriculum development. You will
Okay, so
see,
Tim,
yeah,
that's a good one to focus on. Because it's a new course.
yes.
So I'm assuming you have a mechanism to ensure that who's ever doing a new course is being compensated the same as someone else. Because some of these, I see new courses and they have 40 hours and some have 32 hours and so is that something that you balance out as you go through this or how, or
So what
is
we,
that then gifted? Well, you ask for 4, you get 4 versus.
it's a great question. So we have a model for this,
Okay.
which for a new course, 40 for a semester course, 80 for a full year course, and then we have escalator multipliers depending on the number of teachers in the project. So like
Sure,
if it's
sure.
a one teacher elective, and then you compare it to a new course that would say be a 4-person team and all 4 teachers are participating in the same
Right.
project, we don't treat them the same. We escalate for the bigger group. When I said Amy and I are in the process of going through this and making those adjustments, sometimes people over ask and we go down. Sometimes, as in the case of unified PE, they under ask and we say, here's our formula, you can go up. Now,
Okay.
the thing is, if they're going to do this, this needs to really happen in the summer. And sometimes people will say, I only want to put 32 hours in the summer.
Right.
And if that's the case, we're gonna pay them 32. But that would be a good example of where we'll circle back and have that conversation.
So this is just a preliminary document. This
First
hasn't
one.
gone through that whole process to ensure
No,
that.
we started that, but this does not reflect all those changes.
Okay, and so if there is a new course on here, it's already been approved by the board going forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Tim, is there a difference between the yellowish and orange?
This is not 100% tracking, but this generally is grouped by level. So you can kind of see the projects that came in by level.
So
In a
is
general
that-
sense, but not a perfect sense.
But that was my color.
Okay, I get the color.
If you see, I want to be crystal clear, and I say this is actually really good. And because it's color coded and really good for a document like this, that should be a clue that the formatting didn't come from me.
And then we have green ones.
Yes,
The green is K-12.
Oh, thank you.
because some things like library media
Okay.
tend to
I get it.
you cross all the levels.
I get it.
But
Okay.
that was just for me to kind of calculate rough dollar amounts. I didn't know you were putting that one in there, but.
And I know this has been a long-term conversation we've had. This is something we do to support continuous improvement of the district. How are teachers accessing it by different content areas and by different levels? And that's been, we've been talking about this for some time. So I think this organization where you see the people involved, the schools, a little color coding to try to bring out the levels. And if there's something that's out of level by the time you see this next month, everything will be in the right cupboard, so to speak. We hope this gives you a better sense of how teachers are accessing these opportunities. Because I mean, this has always been something that had its legacy in kind of the idea of new high school courses. But it's a continuous improvement option that we want all teachers to participate in. And over the years, we've tried to really build up participation outside of the high school level.
Well, to your point at the start, I think, again, it speaks to the professionalism, the quest for excellence and high achievement. It's just a phenomenal document of how many of our staff are really working for the best of our kids.
And I think this, and thank you for that, Mark. I think also, I mean, we are well, 4K doesn't really, 4K shows up differently. So let's say we're a K-12 public school district with 6 schools, a very robust and comprehensive set of programs. We spend a lot of time in our public meetings talking about our priorities, and our focus on priorities is really important work around this table. But everybody should understand that under the hood and out of sight of the big rocks we're trying to move, there is a continuous set of activities in a lot of different areas that teachers in different grade levels and disciplines are engaged in to keep us where we are and hopefully move us up. And again, all to promote student learning. So, you know, we haven't spent a lot of time since pre-pandemic talking about district library plans, but you'll see but it's something that Rick and Amy and I work with a lot with our library media team and the ed tech specialists. So you see that they have work involved around updating the plan. So just to highlight one piece out, and if you look through this in its entirety, it kind of gives you a pulse of the entire set of work folks are doing. You'll see this again next month. Any questions beyond what we've kind of surfaced so far? And certainly as you look at this more, depending on the level and the content area, reach out to Amy or me and we'd be happy to fill in your questions.
Thank you. That brings us to item 8, textbook request.
And it doesn't look
First
like we have, do we not have an attachment?
You did not.
Apparently not. Are we able to unlock that and do something on the fly?
Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves.
Only if you know your password.
Hang on just a moment. Okay. Sorry about that.
I don't even have it in when I log in, but this is public login. I don't have it on my login.
Is the agenda unlocked now, though? Is the meeting unlocked?
I didn't unlock it, but I should be able to see it regardless when I
Yeah,
log in.
so could you unlock the meeting right now?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes.
I just unlocked it.
Thank
So. Edit
This is
agenda.
really your first look.
Yeah, I am sorry about that. I think there might have been something in there and maybe I didn't hit save. So that is a very fixable.
This is a much shorter spreadsheet though than the curriculum requests, so.
Yes. Okay, so. Because we're just past where we got some time to do this.
In the original 16 people who chose the 2 pilots, were those volunteers or selected individuals?
So it was,
Yep,
the
that's
math
done.
leadership, so the chair and
I see
the
it.
board members and the
There you go.
coaches.
Okay.
And
Thank you, Rebecca.
math interventionist. Beyond those, I think the coaches have some people to show like, oh, we need a 2nd grade teacher, whatever, just to get the representation, but we started with the formal leadership roles. That makes sense.
Okay, so again, thank you for your patience with this. Again, this is only the first look. We'll come back and have the full look. This is comprehensive with the exception between now and our next meeting, we will have the adoption decision from the middle school ELA team. And we'll add whatever, which one of Amplify or My Perspectives is selected by the middle school team, and that'll come on. But what you see here, obviously, currently the largest item is the mathematics resource that Amy and the coaches were speaking to. You also see a pretty significant commitment to additional Dakota texts to support the work of Act 20. So you see all of our major work really driving this, and then you see a lot of the pieces you would typically see from high school and some other areas. And so the next time you see this, which will happen in advance of during the meeting, you'll see the middle school ELA in, and then once the conversation occurs pretty soon after we come out of spring break with the 5-8 math review, and they decide Amplify Desmos and whether it's going to be Kendall Hunt or Imagine, this is the second. We reach out to those publishers and see if the pilot materials are gratis, or whether we will have to potentially invest a little bit to do the kind of pilot we want to do. And so if we do need to invest, that will show up there. That should really be 5-8 math, and that'll be a placeholder, and that'll be updated. And again, with what we have in our standing budgets and what we currently have in our accounts this year, we anticipate we'll be able to handle this.
The ELA for middle school, that pilot is has started, or
We've
it's,
been piloting during the year.
yeah,
Yes.
okay, and so.
The
they'll-
decision is coming up fairly soon after
Got it.
break. Yes, and then that'll lead to, it'll be on there, we'll have a dollar value associated with the cost.
So you're piloting 7-8 now.
Yes,
And next year you're gonna pilot 5-6.
so piloting 7-8 English,
Oh, English.
piloting middle school ELA, and this year to implement in the fall, we will be piloting 5-8 mathematics
In the fall.
next year for implementation, we
Yeah.
anticipate the next year.
So that
Yes.
placeholder for math, that's with pilot materials?
Yes.
So some publishers will give you everything you want gratis.
Yeah.
Others, depending on what you want, because quite frankly, we actually like to pilot materials before we make a decision. We like our teachers to actually have experience with them. That probably happens less today nationally than when Amy and I started our careers. So publishers, what we want to do is not, I mean, certainly they're familiar with what we want to do. We've never had a publisher going, you want to do what? I mean, that's never it, but their model is not as set up to support with some publishers free. Typically, if it's digital, they will give you the digital for free in a pilot. But, you know, so like we were talking about 5-8 mathematics. One was Amplify, which is wholly digital. If that, we'll have to find out from the publisher, but that has a high likelihood of not requiring an investment. Kendall Hunt, paper, Imagine Learning, a hybrid. It's possible when we go to those publishers after the pilot, after kind of the review teams meeting, it's possible that they may say, well, if you want the printed materials, you're going to have to make an investment as a district. Too soon to say, because we haven't actually made our decision on the second of the two resources. So that's why we have a placeholder there. That might be nothing, it might be something.
Sure. Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you, guys.
So as we look ahead to upcoming agenda items, we'll have second look at curriculum projects and textbooks, and you'll, now that I've seen kind of the reveal banner for elementary math, I think I may need to talk to Lynn and the high school and the middle school ELA team. Maybe we need to do a little thing. We'll see where the temperature is on that. And then in May, one thing we know we're gonna be bringing in will be an update for you on AI in education and where we have been, where we are, and where we might be going.
Is there any chance yet before the year is out? And I know May we would have a new curriculum committee. But we had talked previously about at least a beginning look at RTI data, maybe over a couple of 2-3 years. How many come in, how many go out, how many stay within over time, something to that effect.
I think May is a good landing point for that. I think that's definitely something we intend to bring in before the end of the year. I think just with trying to get those pilot pieces moved, it would
Sure.
be a
No,
push for April, but
Right.
May, I think. you can
Okay,
count
that'd
on
be
it.
great, and then. I don't care if it's April or May, but I like a little bit of time. For the committee to talk about whether we'd like to make a strong recommendation for like a. ELA night and a math night for elementary schools as they go into a new program.
Because one
and-
of our priorities is community engagement.
Yeah. Something to that effect, and, obviously if we're recommending it, then we have to also consider, okay, are we looking at compensating staff or not, what have you, but. To me, these are two huge initiatives that. We have a very engaged community and people want to know what our curriculums are, and with these changes, I think. It would really kickstart. The understanding that there is a change and that, even if they don't understand all of it, they're. It's an introduction for them. So something to that effect, if we could have a discussion about that. If,
What month do you think would be a good month to bring that in?
Yes, is that a topic for the curriculum committee? I guess, I wasn't anticipating that. I guess May.
okay. Great, okay. And if there's nothing else, we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye.
Thank
We beat the agenda schedule.
Despite some very big
Oh, big
presentations.
stuff. Yeah, yeah.